uh, which is a part of our lives now, because we are trying to shift to a digital mode, or online mode. So first of all, on behalf of our organization, I extend a warm welcome to all the participants, and especially our speaker, Mr. Thomas Tejo. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So Thomas is a visually challenged person, and he is the president of an NGO, a voluntary organization, Vision Inclusive, which is an international organization. He's also an educator, an activist, a researcher, and also mobility and eco-location inclusive trainer. So we'll hear about him more when he will come to speak. But today is a very interesting topic that we are going to talk about. It is about something which we experience in our, particularly the visually challenged experience in our daily lives. And that is about locating our surroundings, our ways, our route, whenever we walk down the road, or we are in a park or any public place. And often people ask me or all of us that how you are able to locate your way, how you are able to move exactly on the turn where the road is moving. And although people wonder, and I try to explain them that there are certain non-visual senses which are being used by visually challenged persons, and those senses are they grow in strength with the time. And normally people uh, call them sixth sense or any other kind of a sense. But this is part of the topic or the discussion that we are going to talk about, that is to locate our surroundings through a technique called echolocation. And that is something which we know, which we experience as a visually challenged person. But now our speaker is going to not only talk about this as a technique, but also how this technique is a science, how it is a systematic study which they have already done in their country. And without wasting much time, I invite Sanchit Katiyar to tell us about the speaker more. Sanchit.
So good afternoon to all. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it is my privilege to introduce our speaker to you, as Nikhil sir has already given you the brief discussion, a description or introduction of him. So I would also very briefly introduce you to our speaker, and he will tell more about him when he'll speak on the topic. So our speaker for today is Mr. Thomas Tajo, and currently he is located in Belgium, Europe, and he is an echolocational or flash sonar perceptual navigational instructor for the blind, and he extensively travels across the world and teaching these techniques to persons with blindness. And he is also a disability right activist or a disability advocate, and his works as well as his advocacy on disability and blindness has also been featured in many television programs and been a part of newspaper articles in across the Europe primarily, and across the world as well, including India, Russia, and other countries. And apart from the instructor, he is also interested in researching these topics and issues associated with blindness disability, etc. And he has given lectures and presented academic papers on the issues across the world in international conferences, seminars, and workshops. So I welcome our speaker, Mr. Thomas Tajo, and over to Nikhil sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanchit, for introducing Thomas to us. And I once again welcome Thomas on this webinar. And now I invite him, and I think we'll listen about a very important aspect of our life. And I think Thomas will talk about the history of how the echolocation and how this technique has evolved, as well as various aspects to it, and how this is important, particularly in today's context, where the visual mode of techniques or visual mode is more dominating than any other senses. So Thomas, please welcome. And Thomas, the forum is yours.
Nikhil, we can barely hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Now it's better, yeah.
1 minute. Now, is it audible?
Now, yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay. Sorry. Maybe some technical issues. So I just thank Sanchit for introducing Thomas to us. And Thomas has been quite active in this important field, and I welcome him once again. And please, he'll talk about the echolocation, the history of echolocation, how this technique has been involved, and how this is so important, particularly in our lives, not only in the life of visually challenged persons, but in everybody's life. Thomas.
Right. Thank you, Nikhil, Sanchit, for inviting me here, and I want to wish you all a very happy New Year for joining this presentation today. And yeah, I mean, that was a lot of introduction about me. Anyways, just to give you a bit of a background. I normally don't call myself as visually impaired or visually challenged. There are many reasons why. But I normally call myself I am blind and very proudly blind, or I call myself as a hearing person or a blind person, because I think that is how we really destigmatize the term blindness that has been associated culturally for a long time. So the best way to destigmatize these kind of terms and terminologies is to embrace it. So that's why I always introduce myself as a blind person who is very proud to be blind. And today, yeah, obviously I'm going to be talking about echolocation and its importance in the lives of blind people, but also for sighted people. But before I go ahead with the presentation, I would kind of request you all to unmute yourself if you don't understand something in between, if you have questions or comments in between. Let's keep it very informal. So don't worry about disturbing me if you don't understand something, because I would imagine it's quite a new topic, so a lot of people might not understand. So feel free to unmute yourself and disturb me anytime. It's not important how smooth my lecture goes. I think what is more important is how we are able to communicate to each other. The topic we are talking about, it's more important that you understand rather than me giving a boring lecture that goes on smoothly for 1 hour or something. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is echolocation demonstration. I will try to give you a bit here in this talk, but normally the sounds don't really work very well, with this kind of electronic transmission with echolocation that well. And the computers are not really designed to effectively transmit acoustic information. At the moment, I would say, the computers, the way they are designed is pretty simple and pretty basic to transmit sounds. So yeah, but I will do my best to do some demos to communicate to you how echolocation works and how echolocation you can understand echolocation and how it interacts with the physical world. So I'll try to do that. Cool. Why don't we I'm just going to describe to you in like a couple of sentences what echolocation means, because I don't want to give you a theory about echolocation. We can talk about theory later, but I would rather you experience something, and afterwards we can discuss more in detail about, the theories behind echolocation, the science behind echolocation. But I would like to start with some exercises, some demonstrations to get this, rolling. So echolocation simply means from the word echolocation. I think you'll understand if you separate echolocation. Echo, obviously, you all know it's a sound that returns, reflects back. Location, obviously, a place. How do you echolocate? To echolocate simply means you locate the echo. So it's not just about the knowledge about the echo, the place where the echo is coming back that you obtain when you echolocate. But when you echolocate, you not only locate the direction, the area, the space from where echo is coming back, but you also get information about what kind of information about the objective world the echo is bringing about. So you not only locate the location when you echolocate, but you also get to know about the material qualities of these objects that the echoes bring back from the objective world. So, that is in a simple term, echolocation. Echolocation allows you to get information about the objective world in real time by listening to the echoes. But what kind of information you'll get? So that is something we will first discuss. So detection. Echolocation first allows you to detect. It simply means you will know if there is something in front of you when you echolocate. So echolocation, mostly we use palatal clicks or tongue clicks. So that's the sound of my tongue clicking. But for our presentation, today's workshop purposes, I'm not going to use the tongue click, but I'm going to use sound just to demonstrate how echolocation works. So the first exercise we will do is how you can detect information by listening to the sounds, by listening to the reflections of the sound you send out. So this first exercise is...
Sorry to interrupt, Thomas. Whenever you feel like, you can explain it in Hindi also, because there are Hindi like audience also, right?
Yeah. Actually, I would suggest would you do that?
I can do that.
Yeah, maybe, so far, first exercise we are going to do is about detection exercise. We're going to detect if something is, in front of us. So for whatever I have said so far, maybe if you can describe it for people, Nikhil, would you mind, please?
देखिए, इकोलोकेशन के बारे में इन्होंने बताया कि ये साउंड यानी ध्वनि से ऑपरेट करती है, जिसमें आप अगर मान लीजिए कहीं जा रहे हैं, कहीं आ रहे हैं, तो आप जो कर रहे हैं उसकी एक तरह से इको आप तक पहुंचती है। मान लीजिए आप कहीं चल रहे हैं तो आपकी पैरों की आवाज से या फिर कोई और आवाज जो कहीं टकरा के आप तक आती है, उससे आपको समझ में आ जाता है कि आपके आसपास क्या है, कोई अवरोध है, कोई खड़ा है, कोई निकल रहा है सामने से, कोई कहीं। तो ये एक टेक्निक है, एक माध्यम है जिससे कोई भी ब्लाइंड पर्सन अपने आसपास के वातावरण का पता लगा सकता है। तो इसमें कई सारी चीजें हैं, जैसे अभी इन्होंने एक चुटकी बजाई या ऐसे आवाज की श, तो इसको करने से चीजें यानी आपको इस आवाज से अपने आसपास की चीजों का पता चलता है, क्योंकि ये आवाज सामने टकराकर आप तक पहुंचती है। तो ये कुछ एक्सरसाइजेस करेंगे और मैं यही रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा थॉमस से कि जितना पॉसिबल हो उतना अगर ये हमें डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करके बता सके that how this thing is being done. तो ताकि वो प्रैक्टिकल में ज्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग लगेगा, थोड़ा ज्यादा इंट्रीगिंग लगेगा. थैंक यू.
Right, thanks. So the first exercise we are going to do is a detection exercise. Okay, so now I'm going to turn to my left. So I'm making this a sh sound to my left. So I would request all of you to close your eyes. Nothing's going to happen. Just close your eyes and just listen to my sounds, and then we'll talk about it. Yeah, so everybody, 1, 2, 3, close your eyes. So now I am going to make a shh noise to my left. There is nothing there. Nothing. But now I'm going to put a plate in front of my mouth to my left, and I'm going to do the shh sound. So I'm going to do shh, and then I will put the plate in front of my mouth. So you should be able to hear the difference. One more time, okay? I will start by doing shh, and in the middle of my shh sound, I'm going to place the plate in front of my mouth, and you should be able to hear the sound changing. Yeah, did everybody hear that? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, we have.
Did you hear that, Nikhil, the difference?
Yeah, of course, yes. There is a difference of sound also, and how it has come back to you.
Right. So we'll discuss that. And before now the exercise is for all of you out there. So now I'm going to produce the sh sound to my left, and I will not. I will do it twice. First time I will do it, and I will also do it another time. I will do it twice, and one of those 2 times will have the plate in front of me. So you will have to let me know if the first share had the plate or second share had the plate in front of my mouth when I was doing the share. So you have to let me know when I'm which of my shares has the plate in front of me. So okay, let's go. So I'm going to do shh twice, and you have to let me know if the plate was in front of me the first time or the second time. Okay, 1, 2, 3, here we go. That was the first time, and here comes the second time. Okay, one more time. First time, sure. Second time, sure. Okay, so now the question is, which sure had the plate in front of my mouth, the first time or the second time?
I suppose second time.
Anybody else? Nikhil, you said the second time, right?
All are muted, so perhaps Pratap may
Yeah,
only
perhaps
answer.
we should unmute everybody. Pratap, can you unmute everybody, please? Yeah. So, Nick.
One more time. One more time. Yeah. So
Okay, one more time. Yeah, everybody still close your eyes. And then, so I'm going to do it twice, the share again, and you have to let me know the first time or the second time has the plate in front of me. Okay, 1, 2, 3, here we go. Second time. Is that clear? Okay, one more time. First. Second time. Great. Now the question is, was it the first time or the second time the plate was in front of my mouth?
Second time.
Who is that? Can you say your name when you? Yeah. So somebody said that was a second time, and Nikhil, you also said second time. Anybody else?
I think second time.
What's your name?
Anjali.
Anjali. Okay, Anjali says second time. Anybody else?
Also because I think it was because louder. It was louder and longer, and
Yeah.
therefore my guess is it was second time because it became louder in as it progressed.
No, I
Right.
think it was basically there was a subtle change in the sound in the second time. It seems that there's something has come up, uh, while stopping it or making it a bit twisted or a bit changed.
Yeah.
Even first time it was not difficult. If you would not have done it second time, perhaps we would not have found any difference in it. So
Right. And yeah. So anybody else?
First one is very near, and second one is far from your voice.
आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही clear, जो भी बोल रहे हैं.
Your sound is very distorted.
So I am saying that first time when you made the voice, it was very near, and second was that it was far from you.
ये कह रहे हैं
Okay,
कि first time the plate was pretty near to you and the second time plate was far than you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Okay. So like actually, maybe we should just keep everybody unmuted. I think it's easier for interaction purposes. If that's okay for you guys, I would suggest let's unmute everybody. Unless you have a very noisy background, then I would suggest you mute yourselves.
Actually, why don't we unmute Thomas? Because there are some people in their houses,
Now all are unmuted.
in their
All are-
locations have different voices, na? So sometimes those voices dominate actually.
Right. Cool. So the exercise we just did, like most of you said, like Nikhil said and Anjali said, and there was another lady. She didn't introduce herself, but it was right. It was right that the plate was in front of my mouth when I did the shh for the second time. And Anjali was describing it quite well. What kind of differences it had. The quality of sound completely changed in the second time when the plate was in front of me. Anjali, would you mind describing it for everybody again?
Thank you, Thomas. My guess was that whereas in the first case, the sound was the volume and the intensity of the first time sound was smooth, in the sense it was uninterrupted. Whereas in the second time, I observed that one, it became louder because the obstruction came closer, just like a mic, I guess. When you're closer to the mic, the volume of your voice is louder, even if you speak at the same tone. So, and it looked interrupted, and also it looked broken at some point of time. Although I'm not very good at collocation, but from your sound, I could. This is what I could gather.
Right, but I think that was exactly what happened. You described it very well. The first time when I was doing the shh, the sound did not have anything to obstruct it. The direction of the sound was clear, so it went very far. But in the second time, the plate was in front of my mouth, so the plate completely blocked the sound. So, like you mentioned, the pitch was higher, the volume was higher because the sound was returning, it was blocked off closer to me. But the first time your sound traveled far into the space, so it sounded quieter. And second time sound was coming back in front of my mouth, just about, half a foot or 1 foot in front of my mouth. So it sounded louder, more intense, more high pitch. Right, you were completely right. So absolutely. Anybody else before we move on? Right. So this is about, it's about physics. If there's an object in front of you, the sound is going to bounce back. But if the object is not in front of you, it's going to travel very far. And if it travels far, of course, the pitch, the volume, the intensity is going to change. So that's what happened. So that was the exercise.
Thomas, can I ask you something here, if you don't mind?
Yeah, please.
Will the sound effect be on the same pattern as we have just experienced because of the voice that you produce, that is sure sound?
Yeah.
If I produce something else, something like oh, will the effect be the same, or it's necessary or tried and tested to produce just one kind of a sound?
Right. No, actually any sound would give you the same information, but I'm using sh today for demonstration purposes because it's easiest to hear. I mean, these kind of noises can also give you information, but they are not that easy to hear for people who are having these kind of workshops for the first time. So I'm keeping this very simple. That's why I'm using the sh sound. Yeah, but other sounds would also work.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool. Anybody else before we move on? Okay. So now we'll do next exercise we are going to do is about the direction. Yeah. So we will do an exercise to figure out which side has the plate, whether it's my left or my right. And we are still going to use the sh sound because that's the easiest one for now. So direction. So I'm going to make a sh sound to my left. There's nothing. And I'm going to make a sh sound to my right. There is going to be the plate on my right. That is the right. And I'm going to do the sh sound again to the left where there is no plate. Try to hear the difference. And now I'm going to do the sh to the right where the plate is. Did you guys hear the difference?
Yes, on the right it is louder and
yeah. Okay, so the exercise now is we are going to mix this thing up. I would suggest you again all to close your eyes in case you see, but in case, even if you don't see, just be a team player, just close your eyes. So I'm going to do sh to my left, to my right, and you have to let me know which side has the plate, whether the left or the right, by listening to the changes in sound. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. To my left, to my left, to my right. One more time. I'm going to to my left. And I'm going to shift to the right. Okay, so the question now is which direction did we have the plate on?
Right
to the
side.
left or to the right?
Right.
Right. Everybody right.
Yes,
Yeah,
right side.
Right, everybody is right.
Right is right, right?
Right is right. That's right. Right is right. That was right. So, I mean, that was pretty simple, right? So you can hear the difference between the object, which direction it has. The plate was on the left or on the right. So you heard it, it was on the right. So now we are going to make this a little more complicated. Okay. So we're going to have a plate on the left. I'm going to do a sh to the plate on the left, which is further away, about a meter from me. Just about a meter. That is the plate on the left, meter. And on the right, just in front of my mouth, there's a plate, and I'm going to sh So this is closer on the right. And now we're going to do this thing again. On the left, the plate is further away. And the plate is closer on the right. Did you hear the difference between the object that is closer and the further away, right and left? Everybody?
Do it again.
Okay, to the right, or sorry, to the left, it's
Yes,
further away.
once more, please.
Yeah, to the left, it's further away. And to the right, it's closer.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so now I'm going to mix it up. At the count of 3, I'm going to shh to the left and shh to the right, and you have to let me know which plate is closer, on the right or on the left. 1, 2, 3, to the right. On the left. One more time, to the right. To the left. So the question
Right
is,
was a bit louder.
So which plate is closer, to the right or to the left?
Right.
Right one was closer.
So right side was closer.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So why don't we try this one more time, yeah? So I have the plate on the left is closer. I'm going to do a share to it. The plate here is closer. On the right, the plate is further away. One more time. The plate on the left is closer. And the plate on the right is further away. Do you hear the difference?
Yes.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we're going to mix it up. I'm going to do left, right, and you have to let me know which plate is closer, to the left or to the right, okay? Let us go. 1, 2, 3, to the left. To the right. One more time, to the left. To the right.
Right is closer.
Right.
Right is closer according to the
Right
mixture.
was closer, sir.
Okay.
Right.
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 Right was closer.
Right. Fantastic. So everybody said right was closest, and you were all right. Right was the right answer. So now the question is, what made you think that right was closer than the plate on the left?
Because the sound was louder, and it was like it was pretty clear that something was blocking it. The blocking was more palpable. It was more clear
Right.
than on the left.
Anybody else?
So sound was forcing just opposite side of your voice, like that, in that side.
Right. Right. So, I mean, what we just did was that, first we did an exercise to detect if there was something in front of you. We were able to detect. So now if you can detect something in front of you, you will never have to bump into it. So I have avoided bumping into so many things just by detecting things in front of me. So that's the first practical lesson we get from this detection exercise. And the second exercise we did was about, the direction. So by producing a sound, you can figure out if there's an obstacle, to your left, to the right, to the back, or to the front. So you should be able to find out obstacles around you, and you can navigate around those. And, figuring out obstacle, whether it's to your left, to the right, in front of you, it will allow you to orient, So if you know there's an obstacle in front of you, obviously you have to turn or to the left or to the right to avoid running or bumping into it, obviously. So the second exercise we did not only gave you information about, you know, things that are in relation to your body, different obstacles or different objects that are around your body. You can figure out just by turning around and, you know, making noise to the left, to the right, to the front, to the back. You can easily figure out if there are obstacles around you. But the second exercise we did was you can also figure out which object is closer to you, right? So we did an exercise where the plate was further on the left, and then on the right, the plate was closer. So you can also figure out which obstacle is closest to you and which is further away. So, you know, navigationally for blind people, obviously you have to avoid first the closest object, you know, the closest obstacle. So being able to detect which obstacle is closer saves you from, you know, saves you more time quickly to avoid the closest object, and then you will have more time to detect and avoid the object that is further away. So you know, so these are some of the practical lessons we get from the exercises we did just now. And Nikhil, would you like to describe for people in Hindi before we move on?
जरूर, थैंक यू। अभी हम लोगों ने 2 प्रैक्टिकल एक्सरसाइज देखी जिनमें थॉमस ने प्लेट का प्रयोग किया था, और इसमें उन्होंने एक आवाज ध्वनि निकाली श करके, और जिसमें प्लेट को उन्होंने रखा एक साइड में, जिसमें दाएं और बाएं तरफ दोनों घूमकर उन्होंने इस आवाज को किया, और उसमें एक तरफ प्लेट थी, एक तरफ नहीं थी। तो दूसरी एक्सरसाइज में भी जो था वो एक में प्लेट थोड़ी दूर थी और एक में प्लेट थोड़ी नजदीक थी। तो इन दोनों एक्सरसाइजेस का जो निचोड़ था वो ये कि जहाँ पे प्लेट मुंह के सामने थी, वहां पे जो ध्वनि की गति थी वो ज्यादा तीव्र थी, यानी वॉल्यूम ज्यादा था साउंड का, और ऐसा लगता था कि जैसे कोई सामने ब्लॉक कर रहा है आपकी आवाज को। और यही डिफरेंस दूसरी एक्सरसाइज में हमें देखने को मिला कि एक जगह थोड़ी कम आ रही थी ब्लॉकिंग और एक जगह ज्यादा आ रही थी, यानी ध्वनि की जो वो तीव्रता थी वो पता लग रही थी, कहीं पे ज्यादा थी, कहीं पे कम थी। तो ये तरीका है, इन्होंने मतलब एक्सरसाइज करके दिखाई। पर मैं ये पूछना भी चाहूंगा थॉमस से, सपोज इफ यू speak, like if there is an if there is a something blocking your way and you have to locate, you know, and you speak something just to find out there is something, so will it have a similar kind of an echo? Just say for instance, if you say hello, right, and if you have plate in front of you or on your right, on your left, so
Right.
what difference you will find in terms of it? That's something you know, very important to know also. Halanki, I think maybe the same one. Or second thing, since you're saying it is a science, are you also suggesting that in society this should be the normal, should be called a normal behavior if a blind person is walking and trying to find out ways and doing this kind of things like shh, and also maybe whistle or maybe create some sound also? So how will society respond to such kind of, you know, gestures or behaviors?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, your question, if you make a hello noise, just talk, obviously that will also give you information about, you know, the obstacles around you. And shh will also give you information about the obstacles around you. And like, you know, Anjali was asking earlier, if you do ooh, they will also give you information about the obstacles around you. It's really about physics, you know, it's about laws of sound and laws of physics. If you produce sound is going to interact with the physical objects and they are going to bounce back. That is what the reflection is, or the echo is, right? So if there is sound and if the sound interacts with object, it is always going to produce echoes or reflections or feedbacks, and you can always use that to get information about the space, obstacles for navigation. But the question you were asking about, you know, can echolocation be a part of everyday life, and should it be taught to blind people? Absolutely. And then, the practical way of using sound for echolocation to get information about, the obstacles around us for navigational purposes in everyday life. So I was just using sound just for demonstration purposes, but it's not the best technique for everyday, method of echolocating. To use echolocation for navigation, we don't use. I just use because it's easiest for the introduction purposes. But mostly we use tongue clicks, palatal clicks. So that's my tongue. That's not my finger. So mostly we use the signal to echolocate for every day, so I click every day in my house when I go out every day. And yeah, so this is a technique that we need to teach the blind.
You're saying like this?
Absolutely, yeah. And the sharper it is, try to click in front of your mouth. Maybe why don't we all do it? Unmute everybody.
We all do that.
Yeah. But try to produce a more crisp, sharp clicks, not like this, because that's not very effective, but with the tip of your tongue, just behind your teeth. Yeah, better. That is somewhere the place where you need to click, yeah. So this is the signal that we mostly use for blind people to get information about the space, the obstacles around them for everyday, navigation. Palatal clicks, or click with your tongue. And this is something we have to develop, we have to practice. So it's important that you develop, these very crisp, clear, sharp clicks. And that comes with practice. And I'm not using this click to demonstrate the exercises today because it's difficult to hear for the people when you're doing it for the first time. And especially when we are doing this online, it's difficult to hear. So that's why I'm using sh, but I don't use sh in everyday life for echolocation. I use this. And also there's a reason why we use tongue clicks for everyday echolocation, for everyday navigation purposes. We use using tongue clicks for everyday navigational purposes. There's a science behind it because this gives us the best information. It's better than sh, it's better than oo, it's better than ah. So scientifically, it has been documented that this gives us the best information. And also your brain gets used to your own echo signal that you produce with your tongue. So when you click, your click is very unique to your body, to your structure of your mouth and your tongue. So over time, when you practice, you will not only develop very good sharp clicks, which will give you incredible amount of information about the space, but your brain also get used to your own unique individual echo signal tongue click. Your tongue click would be very different from mine because we have two different bodies. Yeah, so this is the signal we use every day for echolocation. So yeah, so try to develop this thing, but I'm not using this today for this purposes, like I mentioned earlier, because it's difficult to hear online. Yeah, before we move on, anybody, anything else?
If you are in a situation or in a location where are louder sounds around you, so what is the better way of, like in your opinion, to find out in around you, like if there are people or there are objects?
Right, so environments obviously change, the sound levels in different space, different environments are very different. And that is why you have to practice, your click sound so that you develop different, volumes of click. So there are environments which is very quiet. You just have to click like this. People hardly hear me, when I'm clicking like that. And quiet environments just require very soft, quiet clicks. But if you go to a much crowded, much noisier place, you have to have a very loud click.
Tongue of today.
But yeah, so with the tip of your tongue, but I mean, this is something you guys have to practice. Yeah, so you vary the volume, the pitch of your click according to the noise levels of your environment. So, you know, I can navigate using my loud tongue clicks in any environment. You know, the noisiest environment like Bangkok or New Delhi, you know, I have traveled there. So, you know, so it's just a matter of adapting to different noise level with different pitches and volumes of your click. Yeah. So when you practice, when you get used to it, you will be able to figure out what kind of you know, volume pitch is appropriate for different environments. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. That brings me to another question.
Yeah.
So do we echolocate along with the cane? And if that is the case, then both the cane is also itself an echolocating device. So both the things will confuse, isn't it? Or we use just a tongue click separately?
Yeah, so no, I'm very glad you brought that up. Actually, you know, if you tap the cane on the ground, obviously many blind people do, right? And that gives you a lot of echoes also. But that echo is quite different from your tongue click. So you really don't get confused. Many times I would click, you know, and other times I would just use my, you know, tap with my cane. They give us different kind of information. So when you click, your click is more precise information it gives you. You know, for example, if you click in front of you, you know, it's going to give you information about the object that is in front of you very softly. So it's very directional, very precise. But when you tap, you know, with your cane on the floor, it travels all over the place. It can give you so much information from objects that are further away. So it's not very directional, but it can give you information about the objects that are further away and objects that are down there, especially, you know, big structures like building, you can get information by tapping your cane on the ground, but it's not as good as your own click. So when you click, you can change, you know, if you want to get information from your left, you turn to your left, you click, and if you want information from the right, just turn your head and scan on the right. And then if you are not satisfied with the information, you click louder. Yeah, so the precise amount of information you get from your tongue clicks and your canes are very different. So actually there's no confusion between the two. They actually complement each other. And coming back to your question, do we use both cane and echolocation? Yeah, absolutely. When you use cane and when you use echolocation, for example, I will be clicking in front of me to hear, you know, obstacles that are around my waist level, my head height, and I don't have to worry about clicking to the, you know, ground every time, just bending my head up and down and up and down. It's pretty boring, you know, it's pretty irritating to do that. So cane will allow you to detect information that are ground level, you know, the pitfalls, obstacles, and you can use your echolocation for objects that are your waist high, head high. So that way echolocation and cane can be combined, and they will give you much more detailed information about the space. So they actually add to each other, complement each other. So the suggestion is never to use one or the other. It's not a choice. It's better to use both of them, so that way you get to know more about the space by combining the information from cane and echolocation. Yeah.
Great. Since we are already in the technology era, so isn't there something like a small device to hold in our mouth that could do the same instead of manually clicking? Something like a whistle, as Nikhil was mentioning, or some beep, something that will produce sound without having to practice the tones of clicking, tongue clicks.
I mean, there are some. No, I mean, there's, you know, there's some. I mean, there's some softwares we will try, and there are also like clickers, you know, that we use, which, like, for example, the door clickers. You know, you can also use that. But so far, the best technique for blind people to echolocate is using your tongue clicks. Scientifically, it is the best, and you get most, you know, best information and more precise information with your tongue click. Nothing so far rivals the information you get from your tongue clicks. No technology, you know, no technology, no dog clickers at the moment, you know, your mouth click is the best way of using echolocation. But I mean, you can use like dog clickers and cane and even clapping to complement, to add to your tongue clicks. But for practical purposes and for scientific reasons, echolocation with your tongue clicks, your palatal click is still the best for the moment. Yeah.
I kind of agree with you because I was imagining and doing my hand clicks, which do not seem to give that consistent information because there is gap in between. Whereas when you do it from your mouth, it is constantly giving information. So one can notice the variations in between.
Exactly. And then once you start working on it, practicing on it, I can echolocate in my sleep. That is how it should become natural part of your life. Every day, that is how I see. That's how blind people should learn to see. Sighted people don't think about seeing, right? They just open their eyes and they see. When I echolocate these days, I don't think about echolocating. I just do it naturally because that is how I see. So, you have to practice to the point that you don't even know that you're echolocating. It just becomes a part of your everyday life. Yeah, and that is how your brain also gets used to, translating information you get from your brain, from your clicks. In the beginning, you will have to do it slowly because you have to first produce the clicks, and then you have to listen to the information, you have to interpret it, you have to analyze it. And then you understand, the information. But over time, when you are echolocating naturally, when it becomes a habit, you click and automatically, without even thinking, you understand what information you get from your echoes, from your tongue clicks. So it has to be practiced, and the more you practice, the more you use it in everyday life, it will become naturally your way of seeing. So you don't even have to think about analyzing the sound. You will automatically, subconsciously understand the information when you click. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, so the next. Sorry,
yes,
go ahead.
I think I will proceed. Yes, please. It was very interesting, and your clicks are very, very, very clear and very crisp. Unlike what I've been trying at this end without making the sound after muting.
Right. So, I mean, that's why, I said, this is a click you have to practice. You develop these very clear, sharp clicks when you practice. I mean, initially when I started clicking, it was also, very bad. I started with clicking like this. I also started with that, so it takes some time, it takes some practice. Just try to, click with the tip of your tongue, and then, and also try to smile when you click, because that not only gives you a nice sound, tone to your clicks, but when you smile, your tongue is already in a position that is good for clicking, that is good to produce good sounding clicks.
Isn't it tiring to do it all through while you're traveling?
No, initially it is, but it's like working, when you are echolocating, when you're learning to click, it's like, your tongue is going to the gym, because we don't use the tongue the way we do when we echolocate. So when you practice, you work out your tongue. So your tongue becomes more flexible, it develops strength over time. And now I can click 24 hours. I don't have any problems. But initially, when you start echolocating, start clicking, yeah, you will have a very dry mouth and you might get tired. So but this comes with practice, just like anything. The more you practice, the longer you'll be able to echolocate, yeah, without any problems. Okay, so let's move on to the next exercise. So this is about discrimination exercise, about discriminating objects. So echolocation, it allows you also to hear the difference between materials by listening to the sounds, the reflections. So let us do exercises on this. discrimination exercise. Okay, so now I have got a plate on my left and I'm going to do shh to it. That is the plate. And I've got a pillow in front of me on the left. Okay, that was a pillow. Now we're back to the plate, ceramic plate, which is very solid. That is the plate. And now this is the pillow in front of me. Do you guys hear a difference between the plate and the pillow?
Yes, there is a difference.
Yeah, so anybody else? Did anybody else hear a difference between the pillow and the plate?
This is very confusing, Thomas.
Let's do it one more time, yeah? So I'm now I have the
Also because the pillow sound is like not having any obstruction. So there is utter confusion whether there is an obstacle or there isn't
So,
an obstacle.
I think
Forget about
because,
identifying the obstacle.
the pillow is softer, so it will not hit back. That sound will not come back. It will not be so loud as it was a plate, because plate is perhaps solid. So
right,
maybe
that's exactly what happened. So I mean, like Anjali says, the pillow sounds like there's nothing in front of us, but it's because, like Nikhil says, pillow is soft. It absorbs a lot of the sounds, so the reflection is less. But when I'm into the plate, the reflection is sound is not absorbed. Most of the sounds, they come back, so they sound very loud. So it tells us about the materials. So when you echolocate, you will be able to hear the difference between different materials. So the pillows, let's do this again. Pillow is in front of me to the left. And now we have the plate in front of me. Is it clear? Maybe one more time. The pillow.
But Thomas, since you have already told us, that this is pillow, this is plate, then we may. It has come to our mind that although fine, because we are you're giving us sort of a narration, but if by chance, without knowing that what is there in front of you.
So that is the next exercise, right? Because I wanted to hear the difference first, and after that, I'm going to mix it up for you. Right. So let's do this one more time. Try to hear the difference between the pillow and the plate, right? So this is the pillow. So try to hear the difference between the pillow and the plate. So the pillow is here. And now we have the plate. So I think you heard the difference. I told you, but now we are going to mix it up at the count of 3. Everybody close your eyes, and I'm going to into the plate and the pillow. You have to let me know what was the first object, the pillow or the plate. Yeah. Okay, let us go. 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. And the second one. Okay. So, one more time. Now the first object. And the second object.
The first plate, and the second was the pillow.
First plate, second is pillow.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir. First one was plate and second one was pillow.
Yes, and second one is pillow.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Anjali? Yeah, so one more time. Let's do this one more time. Okay, I'm going to So one more time. Was it?
Uh,
Go ahead, Anjali.
Basically, if you would ask me honestly, I would say one time there was a plate and the next time there was nothing. Because for me, the distinction between the pillow and having no obstruction was almost the same.
Right. Yeah. So don't worry for the moment. If there was no obstruction or pillow, the only thing you need to hear is a difference. That's good enough. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to start. Okay, so let's do this one more time. Let's do this one more time. I'm going to shirt in front of me to the left. And then the next one. One more time. And then next one, second one. Okay, so the question is, what was the first object and what was the second one?
इसको mute कर दो. Somebody.
सबको पहले सब आगे हैं, कोई नहीं आया, आगे सब.
Okay, so we had two objects. Which object was the first and which was the second one? The pillow and the plate, from what we heard.
कहीं पड़ी हो स्पंज वाली कहाँ है और
जसप्रीत जी अपना अनम्यूट कर लीजिए, म्यूट कर लीजिए.
Thomas, you can do it once again. Actually,
Okay,
there was
let's
some.
okay, let's do it one more time. Now I'm going to to the plate and the pillow, and you have to let me know which object was the first and which object was the second one. Yeah. So first, shirt to my left. Second object. Okay, one more time. First object. First object. Second object.
Oh,
there you
God.
go. So what was the first one and what was the second one?
That's the guess, but now I'm not sure actually, because left side it was a bit constant, seemed to be a pillow. On the right side, a bit softer. Then again, it became louder. No idea. Perhaps a plate on the right.
You mean the second one, plate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sir, I believe that both the object are pillow. I think the pillow was there.
Okay. Anybody else? Maybe let us just do just one more time this exercise. Okay. So now both objects are on the left. So you just have to let me know what was the first and what was the second one. Yeah. So the first one. Second one. Okay, the first one. And the second one. Right, there we go. So the question is, what was the first object and what was the second one?
I think the first one is pillow, second one is plate.
Yeah, and what's your name?
Kushal.
Kushal, okay. Anybody else?
No, I think I'll go with this. Fine.
Okay, you also go first pillow, second plate. Anybody else?
Yes, sir. Me, Dinesh. Sir, first one is pillow, second one was plate.
Right. Anybody else? Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Ram this side. We had earlier on this workshop in JNU, and I recognize it that first one is pillow, of course, and second one is plate, because there is a, the second one is a bit thin sound, and the first one is, kind of surrounded by, like, seems like surrounded by or something near to ear. Though I'm not having earphones, but I can recognize it.
Right. So yeah, so you all were right. Second one was the plate, and the first one was the pillow. I mean, can you explain it for the rest? One of you guys, what made you hear the difference between the pillow and the plate? What made you say that?
Sound was the second time the sound was harder, like harder in a sense that since the object was solid, so sound was it was a bit louder than the first one, and there was a, I don't know, there was a minute change also, because it gives you a feeling that there is a hard object in front of you, whereas the first sign there was a sound, but was not giving a clear picture clarity, at least for me, that whether it is a solid or not solid object. But yes, there was an object. But when you did the second time, it made a sort of a comparison that the second object is harder than the first one.
Right. Right. I mean, that is how it works. Sound completely changes when it interacts with objects. If it's a hard object, obviously it's something to do with the physics, laws of physics. If an object is made of atoms and molecules that are very closely bound to each other, it will absorb less sound. So the reflections would be much more high pitched, more concentrated. It would sound much more intense. Volume would be higher, amplitude would be higher, pitch would be higher. But if it's a softer object, it will absorb a lot of the sounds. So reflections would be less. It will sound low pitched, and the volume would be less, and the frequency also would be less. The pitch would be less. Yeah. So exactly. So this is something we have to remember. When we echolocate, when we listen to the reflections of our echo, you have to, if object sounds much more high pitch, if it has higher frequencies, it sounds much louder. So it will say that this object is closer, or this object is, a harder object. So that is how you make a difference between, objects and their materials. Hard materials would, sound much more louder, much more high pitch compared to softer materials, which will, give back less volume and pitch and frequencies. Yeah, so these are some things to remember. Change in frequencies, volumes, pitch. When you echolocate, they will give you information about the material qualities of the object. Yeah, fantastic.
Thomas, whatever you did up till now, I think it was active echolocation, right?
Yeah.
So do we also talk about the passive echolocation? How do they contribute in our lives?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, so I mean, there are like two types of echolocation.
Let me tell it for the Hindi audience also.
Right. Go ahead.
अभी तक जैसे जो एक्सरसाइज थॉमस ने अभी की हमारे सामने, कई तरह की एक्सरसाइज थी, कुछ तो पहले भी था, हालांकि आपको समझ में आ गई होंगी, लेकिन ये जो एक्सरसाइज हैं, ये जिसके तहत हम करते हैं, इनको हम एक्टिव इकोलोकेशन के नाम से जानते हैं, जिसमें हम खुद साउंड क्रिएट करके अपने आसपास के वातावरण को नेविगेट कर रहे हैं, उनको पता लगा रहे हैं। तो अभी मैंने उनसे पूछा है कि जो पैसिव इकोलोकेशन होती है, यानी जो हमारे द्वारा हम लोग उसको नहीं करते, यानी वातावरण से जो उत्पन्न आवाजें हैं या जो भी चीजें हो रही हैं, उनका प्रयोग कोई भी जो भी साउंड बेस्ड जो हम लोग लोकेट करना चाहते हैं, वो कैसे करते हैं, मतलब चाहे वो विजुअली चैलेंज्ड हो या विजुअली एबल्ड हो, साइटेड हो, तो दोनों ही व्यक्ति किस तरीके से कर सकते हैं।
Right. So, I mean, like you mentioned, the one we just did was active echolocation, because we actively produce sound to get information about the space, the environment around us. But the other one we are going to talk about now is passive echolocation, like you described. Passive echolocation is quite similar to something they call sound localization. You know, the information you get from the environment, sounds you get from the environment, you know, like the sounds of the car, sounds of, you know, the trees in the breeze, or people talking. These are all information you can, something we call part of passive echolocation, or even sound localization. So the sounds coming from the environment, you listen to them, and then you use them to get information about the space, and then use that information to obviously to navigate around, and also to orient yourself around. But you know, there's a big difference between passive echolocation and active echolocation. Passive echolocation, you are not in control. So you have to wait for the sounds to come from the environment. If there is no sound, well, you can't get any information about the space from sound. But active echolocation, you can click anytime, and anytime you can make the information about the space available to yourself. Yeah. So, but they can be combined together. For example, many times I would just listen to the sound of the car to get information about, you know, the environment, the space. So they can be useful when you mix them together, but we don't have to then think of only doing one or the other. You know, we have to learn to combine. So that way, it's like we talked about earlier. You combine echolocation and cane, you get bigger piece of information about the space around you. And if you echolocate and if you use the passive sounds from the environment, you know, so you'll get a bigger piece of information. So add them together, you will have huge amount of information telling you about the nature of the space, the environment, which will allow you to move about freely and safely. So yeah, so it's important to combine all those, and never to, you know, pick and choose and say, you know, I'm going to do active echolocation, I'm not going to do passive echolocation. They are all important. Yeah, so it's important to combine all of them. Okay, so but getting back to active echolocation from what we just did, you know, we did the detection exercise where you hear if there was something in front of us, and then we also did the directional or information about the direction of the object, you know, whether it was on the left or right and how far it was from us. And then we also were able to distinguish between objects based on the material qualities they have or the shape they have, you know, with the discrimination exercise. But unfortunately, in online exercises, you know, a presentation like this, we will not be able to do something we call panel exercise. So panel exercise, the one we just did, all the exercise in real life, obviously we do it differently. For example, I would sit, you know, Nikhil would sit in front of me, and I would stand behind Nikhil to do the detection exercise. For example, you know, I would place the plate in front of Nikhil's mouth and ask Nikhil to, you know, click or shh to hear if the plate was in front of him or not. And then if he says that the plate was in front of his mouth, then I would ask him to touch it to confirm. So the reason why we do this is we have to learn to confirm what we hear. Often we don't trust what we hear. We are not, you know, taught to hear what we hear. You know, there is the concept called eyewitness. You know, people trust what they see, and it's legally binding, right? People can get punishment. They can even be given capital punishment based on what they hear, what they see. They trust what they saw, and that becomes, you know, a way to convict people based on that evidence. But we don't have a culture that allows us to trust what we hear, that our hearing really tells us about the world, that we can really get information about the world, about the objective world. We can really hear obstacles around us just by listening to, you know, the reflections. We don't have that kind of a culture. And that is why when we do these kind of exercises in real life, we call these panel exercises. I will place something in front of you or to your left or right, and I will ask you to click and try to hear it and then touch it. So that is how first you try to hear if there's something, and then you touch it to confirm what you hear is really there. So that is how over time, gradually you begin to build trust in what you hear. What I hear really exists. It's not an imagination. It's not a figment of my imagination, but my hearing really tells me about the objective world. So that is how you really begin to trust what you hear. So in the beginning, I would click many times to things around me, and then I will go and touch it. So that is how we learn to trust what we hear when we echolocate, when we practice echolocating. But over time, you just click once and the thing is there. You don't have to touch it anymore to believe that it is there. So this is the trust that comes with practice, and that is why it's important in the beginning. Try to hear things around you. If the door is open, if the door is closed, try to hear the difference and then go and touch it to confirm it. And later, over time, you should be able to click once or twice and know if the door is open or closed. So this is how we learn to build trust in what we hear. So so do these kind of exercises, like try to hear if the door is open, the door is closed, or use different materials. Ask people to place something in front of you and try to hear it, and then ask them to remove it, and then play this game which we did with your families or with your friends, and then do it in everyday life. So that is how you really learn to develop trust in what you hear. And it's important, because we trust other people's capacities. Blind people, unfortunately, we don't often trust our own abilities. So the part of echolocation is about learning to build trust in our own senses, in our own abilities. So this is, why echolocation is important. You practice and you begin to understand that your hearing can give you so much information, and that will completely change the way you look at yourself and your abilities. Yeah, so anybody else before we go on anything? You got a few seconds to interrupt.
No, sir.
Okay, so in summary, echolocation can allow you to get information about, abstractions or obstacles around you. And you can also get information about the direction of the obstacle to the left, to the right. And you also get information which object is closer, which is further away. But you can also get information about the shapes of the objects when you echolocate. And also you can get information about the materials of the object. Materials, different objects with different materials, they sound very different. So these are all information you will get when you echolocate. But echolocation adds something that completely breaks the traditional expectation about blind people. So, traditionally it was thought that blind people cannot navigate using, they cannot obtain information from a distance to navigate. So the information we will have to use is, the cane mainly to get information from distance for safe and graceful or comfortable navigation. But echolocation allows you to do something called allothetic navigation. So there's a concept called idiothetic navigation. It's a concept that you navigate using haptic, tactual information. That's idiothetic navigation. So blind people are mostly taught to navigate using sense of touch through, the use of the cane, their feet, their hands. But they never thought that blind people can't. They never thought that blind people can navigate allothetically, meaning they cannot get information from distance to navigate information beyond the reach of your cane. But echolocation can allow you to navigate using information from hundreds of meters away. So this completely breaks away with the myth that blind people can't do allothetic navigation. So for example, you can hear a tree, especially big tree, from like 30, 40 meters away. You can hear a house from half a kilometer away, So it completely, and you can use that information to navigate. For example, if you're in the middle of a huge park, if I just turn around and click, I would be able to hear where the houses are. And I can be in the middle of the park and I can orient myself without any, using information that is far away from me, the information from the corners, from the boundaries, from the distance, houses that are across the street. So echolocation allows blind people to obtain information that are really, really far away, and then they can combine that with, cane and the passive echolocation, and they can get so much information, and which should be adequate for you to travel freely and safely on your own. So now blind people can navigate allothetically. So it completely breaks away with the scientific myth that blind people can't navigate allothetically. Okay.
Great. That's interesting, Thomas, and very promising. But in this age, I don't think all of us have to learn to reinvent the wheel. So, are there any resources to which we can train our hearing and trusting the sound that each, I mean, maybe as many objects and as many directions, as many clues, as you have mentioned, you gather by practice. So are there any tapes? Are there any compilation of sounds that echolocation produces so that we can keep revising our understandings theoretically first and practically implementing subsequently?
Yeah, I mean, I think the simplest example is like we talked about earlier. First, practice on your clicks. Try to develop, good clicks. Try to develop sharp clicks, that is peculiar to yourself, to your body, and then click into different objects. Try to hear the difference, try to hear in your house.
Yes,
keep the door open.
While you are doing this, I'm also doing it around my house.
Right.
I'm doing with my, I know the distance between the wall and the doors and all that. So I can identify there is a difference, and it makes, it is a very assistive technique. But my concern was that if we have documented and we have recorded different sounds that you are, for example, demonstrating here, and if we have some compilation of different sounds for practical, for learning and revising, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time, and we don't give up while we practice because of temporary errors. So because in this age of resources, I don't think it would be all that difficult for some compilations to be circulated, so that we have identified the sound ourselves, and we are just practicing theoretically, or just learning by listening to the sounds, recorded sounds, and then putting it to practice with confidence.
I mean, there are so many sound recordings, but specifically about echolocation, they are now, we don't have acoustic data for sound recording, for echolocation purposes, but there are so many sounds that are recorded for movie purposes, for artistic purpose. There's so many like that kind of sound effects and things like that. But for our purpose, for echolocation purpose, actually the best way is you don't have to start with these recorded sounds, because recorded sounds are quite different the real sounds are quite different from recorded sounds. So I think the best way to go about is not to rely on recorded sounds and try to understand it. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. You can do that, but I think the easiest way, the direct way of applying echolocation is to click, practice echolocation in your everyday life, in your house, with different objects, different materials, in your, the sound of your rooms, they are very different. Your bathroom sounds very different from your bedroom. The parks are very different, trees are very different. Try to, use this existing materials that are out there in your real life, so that you get to understand, the sounds of the objects are around you, and then use that for everyday purpose of navigation, so that way your exercises becomes a part of your everyday life, instead of, separating practice and then everyday life. So the best way to practice is to, practice echolocation with the environments, with objects that surround you, and that way you can apply this thing in your everyday life, rather than starting with recordings online. I mean, that can be useful, but then that is a second step. You first listen to the sounds and try to understand, and then you try to reproduce those sounds in the real world. I mean, it's a much longer process. I think easiest process is just click through the environment around you, try to understand it, and then use that information to navigate. For example, when I go to a new place, I just click around, and then 2 seconds later, I understand, the way the environment is set up, the way the room is set up. But, and then I apply that immediately for my own purpose, for navigation right there. So I think the best way to start is practice in your own environment, in your office, in your school, at home. Try to understand the objects, And then that way you apply, echolocation right away. So then there's no gap between practice and application.
Yes, Thomas, but you have achieved that expertise and skill. We are still beginning to learn that, although some part of it we would, but to hasten the process, I thought that that could be one easier resource if available to us. Yeah. Anyway, but there is no choice but to practice for sure.
No, easiest way is, the easiest way is, that's the best way to go about it. And then, I mean, it took me a long time too, but the thing is that I did not have a teacher, so I had to discover everything. I had to understand the science. I had to experiment. But at least, for people like you now, you can ask me and we can organize workshops, for more people. And for you guys, we can, do this thing and you can ask me questions and I'm there to help out. So I think for you guys, it becomes easier, even though we don't have this online database for, recorded sounds. But I think, that's a project we can build into maybe in the future, to develop this online database. That's worth looking into, part of the training. But for the moment, the best way is, like I mentioned, to do it in everyday life. I mean, that is how I practice, Otherwise, I think actually that is the best way, because I have many students also, who can echolocate so well, but there's a big gap between learning to echolocate and applying it in everyday life. There's a big gap. For example, I have students who are better than me so many times, but it doesn't mean that they are better than me in applying echolocation in everyday navigation. So this is, I think, the next step that comes for us to understand. I think Nikhil previously brought up this thing, which I did not go into detail. He was asking about, can we apply echolocation in everyday life? Should society make it, normal part of blind person's life to learn to echolocate, use sound systematically for everyday purposes? So the best way is to, echolocate, practice, and apply it in your everyday life and be comfortable with it, because so there are many people who have canes but they don't use the cane, and many people who might have echolocation ability but they don't use it because they're afraid of being stigmatized. So our part of practicing echolocation, using cane every day for everyday navigation, it allows us to deal with both these issues. First, by applying echolocation and using cane, you learn navigational techniques for everyday navigation, but at the same time, using it every day, you get to deal with the stigma that is associated with cane or other techniques of navigation for blind people. So you overcome both. But if you just practice echolocation in your room, if you don't apply it, maybe you go out tomorrow, if people might look at you. I mean, you might imagine that people look at you strangely because you echolocate. Many times, people don't look at us strangely, but we just imagine that they look at us strangely and we don't want to echolocate in real life. So then, there's no purpose of learning echolocation if you can't apply it. The same thing with a cane. If you have a cane, if you don't use it, what's the point? So, we have to work on both ends. We have to learn the skill and then apply it. At the same time, we shouldn't allow society to stigmatize these techniques that are useful for us, and because many blind people don't use their canes because they are afraid of being seen as a blind person, and then they cripple themselves. So they have to wait for other people to take them around instead of using their own canes to navigate in everyday life. Yeah, so it's better, I would suggest, to practice in your life every day and apply it right away, because that is the best way to practice is to use it. Otherwise, there's a big gap between practice and using. First you have to practice and later you have to take the step of using. Those are two different stages. So it's better to mix both the steps, practice it in everyday life and use it right away. So that way, there's no gap between the two, practice and using.
Hello, sir. My name is Dinesh Kumar, sir. I have a question that, sir, initially can be used any electronic gadgets or a small speaker in while helpful in echolocation in initial stage? Can we use that kind of a speaker, small speaker, for echo tracing? Okay.
The question is, why do you want to go and buy electronic speakers that are expensive when you can do it for free with your own mouth?
Oh, initial stage when we want to locate the area or surrounding, so that can be easily,
Yeah. I mean, you can record your sound and try to hear the difference. You can record with your iPhone or any other, smartphones and try to hear, sounds of of echolocating. For example, if you click in the open space or in an empty room and you record your echolocating in different environments, you will be able to hear these different sounds. For example, when you record yourself clicking or echolocating in an empty room, it sounds very different from a full room or in a studio room that's soundproofed. Yeah, I mean, you can do that for practical purposes on your own, but there are no such specific techniques just to say, we want to use these software or these speakers to learn echolocation. So, I mean, these technologies can be useful, but the best way is to, use your own. Your body is the best technology that there is, Why ignore it? Because technology can break down tomorrow. But the simple example is that many people think that, they just need digital technologies for navigation. I don't start with that. If you start with digital technologies for navigation, if your digital technology breaks down tomorrow, what are you going to do? Right? The battery might be low, it might be gone, or the technology breaks down. You can't do anything. You might be lost in the middle of the road. So the best way to start is develop your own native bodily sensory navigational abilities. Technology can only expand and add to it. So, but if I rely on technology to start with, if the technology breaks down, I'm helpless in the middle of the road. But if I have my basic skills developed using my own body, my own senses, technology can add to it, can amplify it. And if the technology breaks down, no problem. I still have my body, my own skill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Again, sir, second question is that, sir, my name is Dinesh Murmu.
Yeah.
Sir, how you have developed this thing? How many months have taken for developing such kind of echolocation thing?
Actually, thank you for asking that question. So it's different for different people. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't have a teacher. I had to figure out it myself. I had to experiment, test it, and try it. I had to understand all the sciences behind it. So for me, it took a while. But for our students, it's different. There are students I teach, who will learn it like few hours, and there are some students who will take few days. There's some, who take few months or few weeks. So it depends on the individuals. We don't have a system, that fits everybody into one way of teaching. So we have to understand, as teacher, what is the best technique to teach this person or that person according to their needs and abilities. So obviously, there are some basic structures to teach everybody in this model of teaching navigation. But the other thing is you have to be really aware of individual needs, abilities, because, for example, if you teach a child, you have to understand their level, the developmental stages. If you teach a blind person somebody who, just lost his sight, you have to understand he has been reliant on, vision all his life. The style of teaching would be different. So you always have to keep in mind the individual differences, and then based on that, you apply your teaching. So, but it's always better to start as early as possible, especially for children, because if you don't teach children navigation early in life, they develop this navigational dependency, the habit, which becomes difficult to get rid of later in life. Yeah, so it's different for different people, but it's possible for everybody to learn. So I would not say that, we can teach everybody on the same, Nikhil would learn very different from you, I suppose, and maybe Anjali will learn different, but we can, of course, we can have courses that for everybody, but within that course, we organize for everybody. We will also have to look into the individual needs of each student or client. Yeah, so those are very, very important. Because, for example, just to give you an example, if you teach a girl in India, because I was teaching in Northeast India, I was teaching a blind girl, and I was working with a blind guy. I had to teach them quite differently, because the expectations from blind girls that are different from blind boys. So you not only deal with teaching techniques, but you also have to deal with the cultural beliefs about women, the roles, the gender expectations, and how do you overcome those things. So teaching is not easy in that sense. You don't only teach people techniques, but you have to teach, you have to deal with all these intersectional issues, something to do with the culture, the gender, the emotions. They all have to be dealt with if you want to teach people to learn techniques to navigate independently on their own. So there's so many elements that have to taken into account, and which is why we have a course called Inclusive Mobility, which takes all these elements into account, not only teaching techniques, but take into account the emotional, the cultural elements, the gender, so that everybody can acquire the skill to the best level that is possible for each person.
Thomas, since you mentioned about your course on inclusive mobility,
yeah.
So can we here in India have the benefit of enrolling and learning from that course, or not?